Welcome to the Tie-Dyed Therapist. I'm your host, Richard Killian. And today I have this wonderful guest that I would like all of you to meet. Her name is Barbara Hines. Barbara Hines is licensed in both New Jersey and New York. She's a licensed professional counselor, LPC in New Jersey. She's an LMHC in New York, which is a licensed mental health counselor. Mm-hmm. She also has the distinction of having an ASC. Is that for supervision? Clinical supervision?
Yes.
And she's also what's known as a CEAP, which is a Certified Employee Assistance Professional. And so Barbara and I are colleagues. We worked together at one point. We've known each other forever. Most of all, Barbara and I are friends. And that's the best thing about the whole meeting, right?
Right.
We're going to talk today about employee assistance programs. We're going to talk about our experiences with them, what we love about them, and why people should use them, among other things, right?
Right.
So one of the things that you wrote to me about was that you said that in 2004 or thereabouts, you actually were trying to do collaborations with employers about using mental health services in the workplace. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. It was, everything is long ago. So, but I was working in community mental health in Hoboken, New Jersey, right across the river from Manhattan. And my boss came to me and said, we have this thing we want to develop EAPs. And we have this contract with the Board of Education of Jersey City. We have a contract with maybe Hope's, a nonprofit in Hoboken, and the fire department, and we really want you to run that. And I just didn't know anything about it, but says you're going to go there, you're going to offer mental health services to them, we're going to do short-term counseling with them, and you're going to lead this program. You're going to lead it, and you're going to run it, and you're going to be the clinician. You're going to do everything.
So you spearheaded the whole thing, basically.
Yes, he really handed it to me, and it was really perfect because I'm a rehab counselor by training out of Syracuse University. In Syracuse, we're talking about the workplace and mental health and the meaning of work to adults, as opposed to any other thing in the entity of mental health. Work is the focus, maintaining health in the workplace, and that workplaces all have cultures. And this was, since I wasn't working, since I was in college and really hadn't had a job, this didn't really mean anything to me. But then as I began to go into workplaces, I began to see the cultures and the nuances and the political, and then plus hospitals have all kinds of different focuses and functions. They have the security, they have the finance, and they have facilities and nurses, of course, nurses aides, OT, PTs, and all of these entities have their own culture and how they view the world and how they view healing or how they view and they all knit together to make a organization run, but they're all very different.
So when you first started this, with that first assignment, what kind of responses do you remember getting from the people that you started meeting in these workplaces?
Well, believe it or not, the firemen, the first responders were the most interested. And also they had a facility where they had the chief who came on, I'll call him Chief B. He had a problem staff. He had problem firefighters, and he knew it. He had inherited them, and he wanted to be done with them. He wanted them to get help. He wanted to be done with them, and he wanted them to get help. So he really he mandated certain people to see me. Some listened, some didn't. Many of them needed to go. Some of them needed to go into substance abuse treatment, but they also had things that were driving their poor behavior and their impulsivity and their fatigue. And so they had all kinds of things, chronic pain. And many of them were quite kind to me. It was very interesting to be with them. I remember I was getting ready to do a presentation, and the fire alarm went off. And so they all said, gotta go. And off they went. They all put on their overalls and off they went. And I was there all by myself. I said, well, isn't this interesting? What's going on? So,
well, that's very interesting, right? Like how even groups of employees, like firefighters, police officers, people in public service that, you would think would be so resistant to something like mental health counseling of all things, right? I don't have a problem, right? But when you meet with these people individually, you find a whole different story, right? And you are able to really impact people and this whole work group in a very positive way.
Yeah, I think it's that connection of face to face. I had these catchphrases like "Don't be distressed or distracted." Don't talk to your brother-in-law, the plumber. Like I'm actually a professional, and I do this for a living. This isn't. I don't like do something on the side. I'm doing this actually on the side. I'm a real clinician, and I have answers. And they had trouble, and some of these were brothers and cousins. So in many of these, the organizations, many generations go through the organization in small towns. So they saw that they knew what I was talking about. They knew the troubles, the mood disorders, the depression, the addiction. They knew that was troubling to people all during the life cycle. And I got to know them.
Right. And at the same time, they know all these things about each other, and they're in a small or maybe not so small work group situation. So the whole idea of confidentiality comes into play, right? So the work that you and I do with employees, we always have to reinforce the idea that, hey, our work together is confidential.
Oh, 100%. And I think HIPAA is much more available to people. Now they hear it, they see the forms, or they go to the doctor's office. And so, but I kept on, and I guess they knew that, and they could kind of slip off because, firemen have shifts, so they could slip in between their shifts and come to see me, and never the twain shall meet. So I really, they just for some reason really knew that it wasn't going to happen for them. Nothing was going to be spilled. Yeah. And I told them, if, danger to self, there are others, there is that caveat. Danger to self or others. And then, I just have to do anything I can do to make sure you and your family are safe. And that's been tested maybe twice in my career. But,
yes.
That man I know told me how grateful he was that I just, we moved heaven and earth for him. We just made sure he was safe.
That's right. That's right. And so as a result of that experience, that really brought you into the EAP industry.
Yes, right? Yes, it really, really did. And I realized then I began to go to the EPA meetings that were in New York and New Jersey, and New York's was very vibrant. And I just tried to know how to navigate it. But I really kind of got the bug for being in workplaces and being able to talk to people and really saying, let's do this so that you have a vibrant and successful career. It's not only you bring all of you to the workplace. The problems don't stay at home. The problems don't remain at work. So we've got to treat the whole person so that you have a vibrant life, healthy, happy life, and for you and your children.
Yes. I mean, it's really interesting how people who go into the EAP field, how they actually enter the scene. Did I ever tell you how I entered the scene?
No, how?
Well, interestingly enough, I always wanted to work with employees. And initially, I went through, I got my graduate degree in human resources because I thought that was the way that you did that, right? But at the time that I got the degree, the master's degree in human resources, there were very few places in the country that offered that degree. And so I would go to apply for HR jobs, and I was told, you're overqualified because you have a master's degree.
Right.
Even though I was starting out at the bottom, right?
Sure.
You'll be bored. We don't want to hire, right? So I ended up getting this job being an HR generalist at a homeless shelter in Boston. And it was a big shelter, and they had probably about 100 or so employees. And I was supposed to manage the employee,
benefits and payroll.
Exactly, the whole thing, right? And my boss, who was he was the chief financial officer and the head bean counter. He thought one day, really foolishly, that he would save a lot of money and he would cut out the employee assistance program as a benefit
To the
to his
homeless shelter.
yeah, right. And of course, the people that worked at this homeless shelter, many of them were former homeless people, right?
Clients, right? With all that goes with it.
All of it, right? All the baggage that goes with being a former homeless person. And of course, this sent shockwaves when he canceled this, because he just sort of like just randomly did it one day.
Uh-huh.
No discussion with me. There was nothing, he just did it. And then there was such a riot going on about that with the employees that he then charged me with finding an EAP program to take care of this benefit. So I was starting to interview people like yourself to come in and figure out, well, could you do the EAP for this group of employees? And one of the women that I interviewed, her name was Marcia. She was a clinician. She was also an EAP account manager. And she said to me, she says, well, what's your background? And I said, well, I have a bachelor's in social work. I have a master's in HR. And she said, if you went back to school and got yourself a master's in social work, like occupational social work, you'd be unstoppable. You'd get an EAP job easily. Well, she was kind of half right about that. But anyway, I took her up on it. I researched it. There was an occupational social work track at Boston College. And I went back to school because I realized that I really wanted to work with employees on a different level than processing their payroll, And I also realized, as you probably have learned over the years, is that, human resources, they're in a really tough position because they really answer to the management of the company, whatever company they work for. Mm-hmm. Some of them do not have any power whatsoever to make any change. Some of them are at the table, but it's really questionable, like how much they're able to help employees in certain situations. And that's why the employee assistance program is so important, right? Because it takes them out of that equation. They can help people, they can refer people to the EAP, they can promote it, and they don't have to deal with all the stuff that you and I deal with on a daily basis, right?
Absenteeism, don't have any money,
Exactly.
Third husband has disappeared, 4 children, different fathers,
a normal
gambling. Gambling. Yes. And they're coming to the HR person's door. This is why, can't you just give me a couple of those days back? And because I had to go to AC, I had to go to AC, Atlantic City.
Right, of course. So that's how I got involved with it. And I never looked back. I love the industry of it. I love the idea. I used to have to do a lot of account management, and I would go into different workplaces all the time and talk about different cultures in a workplace, right? Like you go into a place like a paper mill, right? Mm-hmm, or high tech or banking or a university setting. The problems are pretty universal, right? I mean, in terms of what employees deal with. But it's like all of the things that happen in the cultures that they're working in, all the messages that they give each other, right? Like, so one of the messages I always got whenever I did workshops with some of these smaller companies was, well, we're one big happy family. Oh. And I'd make that face too. Because I just hate that idea, right? And one day I did a workshop and I heard that comment, we're one big happy family. And I said, I have to say this, you're not going to like it, but when I hear that, it makes me want to vomit. And they'd say, what? And I said, because the only families I know are dysfunctional ones, right? So basically, you're basically saying you're one big dysfunctional family to me. Mm-hmm. And I don't buy it. You might be friendly with each other. You might know each other really well. You might know each other's families, but you're not family. You work together. You go home at the end of the day. You have your own families to deal with at home, right? Like why add to the problems, right?
By acting things out, or like we say, acting out. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that you can be singleness of purpose. You certainly can be singleness of purpose and kind of balanced, like each other. But you have to have a sense of there's me and there's you, and that sometimes those barriers or those toxicities come with you to the workplace, and you can't be your best self. And you're a nurse or you're an occupational therapist, and this organization wants you 100%, but you've got, sick people, all kinds of things are happening at home, and you dump it. We know how to efficiently navigate human despair, human challenges that really are irritating and exhausting.
Well, that's it. And you kind of nailed it on the head earlier, because the thing is that we don't want people, playing out their dysfunctional family stuff in the workplace. There's enough of that goes on, right? That we have to counteract. So anyway, what I also really loved though about doing EAP is the type of clients that I saw. And I'm sure you've seen this many, many times. It's like when somebody comes into an EAP normally, they've never had any counseling before. They are a breath of fresh air, aren't they? Right?
Yeah.
Because they come in and they don't have any assumptions or expectations about you. They don't know what's going to happen. They don't have a script in their head about what they're supposed to say. When you do private practice work, and you've been a private practice therapist for many years, you can tell the people that have had a lot of therapy and how they come in, and they know the questions you're going to ask before you ask them.
Yeah.
They've already figured out the answer that they're going to give.
To navigate.
Right. And the problem with that is, they've prepped themselves by, knowing what they're going to answer. But is that answer really the truth of what's going on? Is it the direction that you and this person need to go in therapy with, right? It's so much better to work with somebody who doesn't have to do all that. They just come in as themselves. They just come in, saying, wow, I need some help. I heard this was a good program. It's free. I get so many sessions. It's confidential. I get to talk to you about anything, and we get to problem solve.
Yeah, I think the short-term model also, they know generally it's been all over the place over the years, but it's been 8 or 6. And then I also was able to curate and match people to good clinicians in network in there. And that was the relationship building, both as you market the program, and then when you say, as you begin to look at a bunch of firefighters or educators and say, what clinician in the community is really going to merge with them and really take them to the next level. And so you just begin to do this matchmaking, but they know that they're going to a known entity, and that they begin to trust you. They trust the program. They trust you. They trust the person you're referring them to. And so to be able to have satisfaction in a field that's kind of hard to put your finger on sometimes. What is satisfaction? What does contentment look like? You're really able to have people that get a little bit of therapy can go a long way in some men and women's lives.
That's right. And it's really many people, it's their first exposure to therapy. It's probably the most helpful in some ways, right? Because even if you don't get to see somebody long term, you get to really do a good assessment. You get to figure out what is it that this person needs and what resources are there in my community for them, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that you're a connector, of so many. And it could be, this accountant didn't work for me. So I used to go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings just for that, because I would just want to know a little bit of everybody out there, where someone could get a nice cup of coffee, or what diner was open late. I mean, because so many people are lonely and baffled
Yeah.
by difficult things. By they get unbalanced, and their decision making abilities are off, or they just have been had a lifestyle of doing the same thing the wrong way.
Yes.
So I kind of looking for those resources. I'm looking for kind of look this, kind of explore that. You can get a cup of coffee. Just next door to the bar is two doors down is the place where you can get a cup of coffee. Just stop before you get to the bar. Go into the coffee shop. Sit there. You
Right.
know, yeah. And a big one in many of our communities, AA, NA, are there. When I started, AA was really blossoming in Hudson County, and you could walk to meetings in Hoboken. And that was a lot to say, this is a place where I can vouch for the safety of this next place. I can vouch for the effectiveness of where you're
Right.
going. You don't have to be failed or betrayed anymore. You're really, little by some, going to take actions that are going to be good for you and your
Yeah.
and your sphere of influence, your family, and your workplace. I mean, those are and your pets too.
Yes. And your pets.
It's all going to be okay. And
Yeah.
the program is what I got called a lot. I'm going to the program. The EAP. Everyone had a different way for it. I'm going to see the lady, or Miss Barbara. I've come to that now. I'm Miss Barbara. Oy, oy, oy. I'm old.
It's great though. I mean, and what you also mentioned, which I think we should sort of include, is this idea that not only do people get really good clinical assessments and movement that way in an EAP, but they get this thing called work-life balance tools, right? So because of all the work that you did, in your community in terms of knowing where things were, knowing where the community resources were, helping people find the right things, whether maybe it's a legal referral, maybe it's a financial referral, maybe it's something like that, on the surface you'd say, well, what does she know about, financial referrals, right? Well, you don't know anything about how to do a financial referral, but you know that the stress of having financial issues impacts your mental health,
Oh, for sure.
right? So if we're talking
Holistic.
about, right, if we're talking to you about your mental health issues, and that comes in as a player, then we have to address that somehow. We have to help you find the resources to get that taken care of so that lifts, right?
That's scary for some people that they have really lost their way. And if
Yeah.
you're, no matter who you are, if you've lost your way and your sphere of influence is depending on you, the groceries and the pensions, all that, they're saying that you're in charge of this and it's falling away, and you're so anxious and so baffled by what you've created, the despair and the dysfunction. And so to be able to, and I guess there's something about EAP counselors that are agile. We have a limited amount of sessions, so we're looking at the assessment. And also, when someone's failing on their job, it's kind of, that the failures have followed them. It's built up. And the
Yeah.
thing that is so important to adults, their job and their workplace, and their connection to other people, is failing. So we've got to do some things very quickly and tell them there's hope. Like, you can change, small changes, big impact.
Yes.
Stop that gambling. Don't take, $150 every day and spend it on lotto. You're going to feel better. You will feel better. Like, stop at the coffee shop. Don't go to the bar. Don't walk down that block. And I don't, even though have worked long term, I kind of knew that I had limited time with some of these people, and I wanted to kind of stop some of the poor actions they were taking that were so undermining themselves
Yeah.
in the workplace and their sphere of influence. I was okay with saying, gambling,
Yeah.
collecting things you're collecting, taking certain substances. It's brought you. Do you want your job? Do you want to? Because if you don't get treatment, if you don't get all the supports in place, I'm here because your job has made me available to help you.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. I mean, and so, what I found in the work that I've done over the last 24 years, you've done it 35, so you're way ahead of me. But it's like, there's people like that you're talking about, right? That have all these needs, and they're just kind of making it, right? They're making it in their workplace, but just barely. They're making it at home, but just barely. But then there's this other group of people that I know you've met, and some of them are highly functional folks, right? I mean,
Successful.
they're right. They're really people that have their act together in so many different ways. And yet they still need EAP, or they're still looking for services. And it might be as simple as I need somebody neutral who can help me problem solve a situation. Like they have the motivation, they have the inspiration to make the change, but they need somebody to sort of be in their corner for a brief amount of time. And
Yeah, I
so,
agree, Richard, on that. And because therapists kind of get a bad rap, and there's that person with the checkered jacket and they have the patches on their elbow, and it's kind of this quiet, glasses. But really, therapy, what I have practiced all my years has been resource development, identification,
yeah,
symptom management, and then there's the kind of other. But that,
yeah,
resource development and resource of identification, what do you have and how can we leash it to your success? If you don't have it, what have I seen in my time on the planet or in human problems?
mhm,
You just don't know that this will work for you because no one told you.
yeah,
There's a secret. The secret to how people are successful, unfortunately, it's kind of easy, but sometimes I have to kind of say that's within you. A small change is going to stop some of the things that you're
yeah,
doing,
right,
and they don't have to be afraid of me. I don't have to, they don't have to guess how they're going to get better, because people are just so despairing that they haven't found the answer. They're good at so many things, but their emotional condition, they really don't know how to make quick changes and lasting change, and how to stay
yeah,
motivated to make that lasting change with that resource. Or the symptoms, if there are symptoms, tell them that they're not going to be addicted to medications that are out there at this moment. You take one a day, not one an hour, feel better. Or
yeah,
things like exercise and meditation that are so available and are so good for people, and they were a little bit afraid of, for many,
yeah.
many years.
Well, it just, the whole thing about being an EAP counselor, it ran counter to what I had learned over the years about what a therapist was, and a lot of that unfortunately came from the television, you know, like how many therapy shows had you and I seen over our lifetime. And then of course, when I first started doing EAP work, I had clients that expected me to put them on the couch. They said,
Oh,
"Where's your
yeah.
couch?" And I said, "Where did you get that idea?" And they said, "Well, Dr. Malfi does that on The Sopranos. She puts Tony Soprano on the couch." And I was like, "You're not Tony Soprano. I'm not Dr. Malfi. We have to have a conversation."
Sit in the chair, sit up
Right.
straight. I'm
Yeah.
sitting up straight.
I mean, if anybody was going to need a couch, it was going to be me at the end of the day. But it was like, but people get all these ideas of what a therapist is and what a therapist isn't. And so what I really love about being an EAP counselor is that I get to see somebody in this beginning place. I get to make a good impression about the rest of the therapeutic community, right? And I get to help shape people's impression of therapy to begin with, because people are really kind of leery about therapists. I mean, you've seen this, right?
They don't talk to us at cocktail parties. I mean, they think that if just talking to us, you get the crazy cooties, that we're just spewing crazy, and it'll stick to you and it won't go away. So, and I guess I didn't until recently. I didn't know what I did and how to make it palatable. But now, post COVID, everyone wants a therapist and everyone wants a puppy, and so people
Mhm.
are. And they're saying, oh, no, therapy is so important these days. So it's like, well, in my household, the therapy I provided was very important because I love it, but it's what I do for a living.
Yes,
Um,
right.
but I would say, just in terms of the fact that we're accessible, is so important because we're working during their work hours. I'm
Yeah,
available 9 to 5. You don't have to, get up, go leave your house at 7:30 and go across town and be, I'm there from 9 to 5. So if you want to use your lunch hour to see me, if your lunch hour is at 7 a.m., I'm going to be there. So that agility really attracted me, that I could kind of
yeah,
morph to meet the institutional needs and show up when someone just show up and be there. They knew they had me.
yeah, yeah. I totally get that. I mean, people are so stretched for time these days, and to be able to, even like I'm working on site, and for somebody to come up to my office, you know,
Sometimes it's tough. Yeah.
I mean, it's great that is an option for them.
And that Zoom is an option now. I mean, I would say to everyone in our radio audience that most of us have been doing face to face for much longer than we've been doing Zoom. So if you
Yes,
can see a clinician face to face, give yourself the platinum standard because that's what we've done. You and I
right.
just happen to be wonderful at this. And clinicians because we're agile and motivated, we've learned this, but give yourself that face to face experience if you possibly can. There's just something very different about the connection that happens.
Well, yes. I mean, it's the whole difference between two-dimensional and three-dimensional, right? When I'm sitting face to face with somebody in the same room, I feel their energy.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel what they're bringing into the room. And unfortunately, as great as Zoom is, and as great as virtual
All of
stuff
it.
has been, especially through COVID, um, it doesn't take the place for face to face. It just can't. You
Right,
know,
right.
I mean, sometimes it's an absolute necessity because you don't have another option. But if you can see somebody face to face, like you said, it's the platinum standard because somebody really gets you in the room.
Sure, sure. And you can't help but let yourself ooze your humanity. It's just there coming out. And I can just heal that and send it back to you. And that's the magic. I mean, we're
Yeah.
doing this, but the magic really is when someone is able to shape and reform some very difficult portions of your inner life and give
Mm.
it back to you healed and better. And that's what we've both done for the better part of 30 years.
Yes, absolutely. So, is there anything else about employee assistance programs that we haven't really tapped into?
Well, I would say culture, class, age, all of that clinicians have really been charged to do. And that's really the fear. That's one that we won't really know them. And in this region of New York City, of the New York, metropolitan area, we are learning about other employees from other, countries and their cultures and how that impacts on their ability to live, love, and work. So constantly learning and asking to help me understand who you are, person from the Philippines, person from Australia, person from
Yeah,
India. I'm just learning so much all the time. And all of my colleagues and anyone who's hearing this, just know that the clinician that may not look like you has had some experiences with someone who looks like you, or they're really going to stretch themselves to understand how culture
yeah,
impacts your day.
yes, they really want to know. I mean,
Yes.
you run across a wide variety of people. I know I certainly do. Different cultures, different ethnicities, different races, different ideas about what work is and what work isn't. I
Mhm.
mean, so many of us have been taught about work ethic from our parents, right? Watching our parents do it year after year. But then, of course, there's different demands, different expectations that today's employer puts on people, right? And some of those expectations are pretty high. The standards are high. The expectations are high, and then of course, if you add in things like culture, ethnicity, you know, it can make for a really steamy situation, right?
And we don't know what we don't know what we don't know. But
Right.
I would I want to assure folks that your clinician wants to understand so that they can shape you or support you in a way or give you the options in a way that's exactly right for you.
Yeah.
So be certain, if you don't think we understand, give us some more information. We want to hear it, and we're going to use it to the benefit of our client in the room.
Right. So in other words, educate your clinician about
Right.
your situation, what your expectations are, how you learned about work, things like that, right? So I know that you've done a lot of work in the last few years around diversity. That's part of the reason why I wanted you on my show, is because I wanted people that understand EAPs to understand that diversity work is a really big part of it. You know, in some companies, in some situations, it's really, you know, a big deal. And so I was hoping you might be able to share a little bit about the kinds of work that you do with diverse populations.
Well, living in New Jersey makes it, in Hudson County, northern New Jersey has made it possible. I'm just so exposed. Jersey City probably has 50 languages spoken in
Wow.
it. So, from all over the world, that's the language, that's the first language in the house is not English. It's Spanish. It's, folks from Iran, Egypt, all the Hispanic population is huge from South America, Mexico, Spain, the Dominican Republic. So there's that just exposure to people who don't look like me and are not speaking the language of English and who are selling food. And that's one of the things. We're going to all these restaurants and all these different cultures and individuals. So that's interesting. But also the gay and lesbian community being so close to the seat of Stonewall, the gay community, and just having, worked early in the AIDS epidemic and watched that and been an activist in those days, watching gay folks get married and have children, and their children having children. And so I've been very, very lucky and blessed to kind of be on the ground with a lot of movements of accessibility to services and clarity of folks' right to have autonomy and happiness, whoever they are. So.
That's right. So when you're in the workplace, though, like in some of these bigger companies, are you ever doing any kind of workshops? Are you doing any kinds of, networking with different employee groups? Like what?
Yes. The ERGs, they call them. I did employee resource groups. So they're for Black folks. They're also for people with disabilities, so that I can send someone who's had a stroke or, has ambulation issues or, is on the spectrum. They all gather together to talk about how they respond in the workplace. South Asian groups, especially Hispanic groups. So I've done a little bit of everything in terms of, or been asked to join and talk about wellness for these groups, which of course is universal, in terms of, feeling calm and feeling content, and how that clarity of purpose makes it easier to do your job. That concentration and motivation, good sleep, good diet, all those things are universal. And when people are fearful or anxious or not sleeping well, and that can be anywhere, any of those groups can have poor sleep hygiene, poor diets, or be not moving enough, not moving their body enough, so they're gaining weight and having physical problems. All those things are very easy. So I'm always talking about the holistic nature of mental health.
See, that's just fabulous, right? I mean, it's great that there are employers out there that look at these things like ERGs and that are really like taking them seriously and understanding that if they can really work with different facets of their employee population, they can really not only improve their lives, but they can, bottom line, increase productivity, right?
Yes. Contentment. I use that word so much because it's not kind of joy and exuberance, but there's something, about individuals when they just feel like they're on the right place at the right time. They're just happy that the day has begun, the day is closed, and I've done what's been asked of me. And now I'm going to go into the next phase of my life, make dinner. I'm going to, call my mother or my aunt, pat my dog, water my garden. I'm content. And I have enough left to go into the next day saying, you know what, this was a good day. Anything is possible tomorrow.
Amen. Amen. We should all have that, right? Wherever we work.
Absolutely. A little bit of something left to get in the car and get an ice cream cone.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So, well, this has been great. I knew this would be great. I knew talking to you and getting your wisdom and your insights and just chatting about our industry would be a fabulous conversation. So I thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. The most interesting question I've got recently is about being a real therapist. Is this real therapy? And and so it's just, yes, this is, I'm a real therapist, you're a real therapist. And maybe it's short and it's fairly direct, and it's problem-based. So that when you're with the EAP, but short term, we're not dealing with the vastness of your life. But we can take one problem, make one change, and you'll have a huge impact on your sphere of influence, and anything is possible. It's just kind of one problem, not the whole global, not everything that's ever happened. Let's just bite off something and make a change there. And then the next, we'll see where you go.
I really love that question, though. I mean, that you get. I don't get that question very often because you know what I would say? I would say I play one on TV. All right. So thank you very much. Hope to talk to you another time. If you're
I think we probably will.
All right. Thanks again. Take care.
You're welcome. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.